Welcome back, quilters, to another Snippets with Patterns by Jen. This week our tutorial is on a microwave bowl koozie. So if you have not heard of these, they are really nice to use in the microwave. But I'm also going to add a personalized touch of personalization to this particular bowl koozie, and I want to talk you through how to do that. Now, a couple things about making this pattern. Everything that you are going to be using needs to be 100% cotton. The fabric, the batting, and the thread. We are going to be putting these into the microwave, and we do not want to start a fire or have sparks flying. So let's make sure that everything that you're using is 100% cotton. Also, if you're giving them as a gift, make sure they know that they should not leave the microwave and they should keep an eye on it. It is fabric after all, and we're dealing with heat and a microwave. So let's make sure everybody is safe. Okay, let's get going. So for our bowl koozie, we are going to need a 10-inch square of fabric and then a 10-inch square of either a liner or the same fabric. It can go either way. They don't have to be different. They can match if you would like. And then a 10-inch square of 100% batting. Now these are also great to use with your layer cakes. So if you have a layer cake of 10-inch squares, this is a great pattern to use. You can just grab two squares from the pack and use those together. You know they're going to coordinate because they're from the same line, and make your bowl koozie. All right, so our first step is going to be marking our lining. So I'm going to use the dark green as my lining, and we are going to make 4 lines. The nice thing about my mat is that I have this nice 10-inch square here. And so I'm going to put my 10-inch square right in there to start with so that I know my lines are in the middle, because we're going to draw a line through the middle straight, another straight, and then we're going to do diagonal. So we're going to do this first. Now I like to use and I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly, probably. I should learn how to say this. The Bohin French chalk pencil. I really like this pencil for marking dark fabrics. It is just chalk, so it will come off when you are done with it. It even comes with its own little eraser, and it's refillable. So perfect. Just like using a mechanical pencil, which I love to use for marking like my half square triangle lines, my flying geese lines, anything like that. This is just what I use for dark fabric. There will be an affiliate link down in the description in case you are interested in getting one for yourself. All right, so we are going to go ahead, take our ruler, and just mark our center line. We don't need a very dark one. We're just a little line that we can follow for our stitching. And we're going to do the center one as well. Now, if you want, you can rotate your square and do it that way. I'm just going to quick go like this. And then we need diagonal lines. And when we do the diagonal, my tip, because we are using a mechanical pencil, basically, we have this width here that takes up a little space when we're drawing it along the ruler. So I want you to set your ruler just off to the side of each point. So not directly on the point. You want it off to the side. That's going to give you a little bit of leeway for the width of your pencil. And then you're going to come, draw your line, and now it's going through those corners, through those points. So again, just off to the side a little bit, not very much. And draw that line. Now these are our stitching lines. So we are going to sew right on these lines for our stitching when we are doing this. Now this is where we're going to personalize it. So let me grab, here is our square. So we're going to layer these together just like this, and we're going to take it over to the sewing machine. Now I found that by putting the batting on this and doing my personalizing now with the batting, it just helps give it, because I'm using special stitches, I'm going to actually add a name. So we're basically embroidering this, and using the batting gives it a little bit of stability, and it works just fine on your machine. Make sure you practice. If you're going to try doing this, go ahead, get a scrap piece of batting and a scrap piece of fabric and practice before you do it, so you make sure that your feed dogs aren't messing up with anything. Now, I did use a walking foot. If you don't have it, that's fine. Just make sure you do switch out your foot. If you are doing a specialty stitch, don't use your same 1/4 inch foot that doesn't have that little opening. You don't want to break a needle. Ask me how I know. So we're going to go over to this machine, do our little specialty stitching, personalizing our microwave bowl koozie, and then we will come back for the cutting and then the finishing. All right, let's add a little stitching to our bowl koozie. A reminder, everything is 100% cotton, including the thread. So we want to make sure we aren't putting any polyester into our microwave. I am going to start by just doing a curvy, pretty little stitch. You can definitely do just a straight stitch following those lines that we did. You do not have to do anything fancy, but this is a great place to either, well, I'll be personalizing this, but you can use any of those fancy stitches that come on our machines. This is a great time to just add a little extra to your bowl koozie. So we'll just go ahead and start. I'm just going to go ahead and let the machine pull it through. I'm just going to guide it, keeping my drawn line right in the middle of my pressure cooker. And we'll continue with the next one. Again, still just doing the same little curvy stitch here. Now I'm still just going to do one last full line of this stitch. Now if you're personalizing it like I am, and you want to do the name or whatever you're putting, if you're putting a little family saying or whatever you're doing with your personalization, you could do that on all of the stitching lines if you want. I'm just going to do one. This one is actually going to my uncle, and since he's a bachelor, he probably doesn't even need his name on here, but since I am making him a Christmas gift and I wanted to do a tutorial on personalizing these, he gets his name on his. So then my next step, I'm going to, again, just put his name. I'm going to put it right about here, but I first need to go ahead and stitch my way down there. And again, you can put this anywhere you want. The only thing we want to do is make sure that we are not putting it, too close to the edges. All right, so now my next step is to put in the name that I want into my machine. So I'm going to quick do that. All right, and now I'm just, again, going to let the machine do its thing, and I'm just going to keep guiding it to make sure that that line stays right in the middle of my pressure cooker. You don't want to pull on it or push it through or anything like that. You just want the machine to do its thing. All right, and now I'm gonna let it go down. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to my curvy little line and finish this off. Now you could definitely use some coordinating thread, accent thread. This is going to be pretty hard to see, but again, I don't think my uncle is going to care so much if his name is on here or not, but I'll show you the back side here quick, and we'll look at it again at the table a little bit closer too. But you can see we've got some pretty little lines and his name, which you can't really see on the right side of the fabric. Let's take this to the table and we'll do the next step for our bowl koozie. So we have our personalized bowl koozie. We have our stitching is done. We have a little name on there if we so choose. You could do anything you want. Birthday could be happy 50th birthday or anything like that. You can use to personalize this. So we have that done now. So our next step, we need to make some darts. So we're going to fold our piece in half, okay? And we want to, we're gonna go ahead and flip it. We're going to line that up nicely in half. We are going to take our marking utensil and a ruler. We are going to mark 1 inch from the fold. And then 2 inches on the side here. So we're going to mark 1 inch on the top and 2 inches on the side. And then we're going to go ahead and do that same thing here. 1 inch at that top and 2 inches on the side there. Okay. Now we're going to take our ruler and our rotary cutter, and we are going to line up our ruler on those marks right there to cut this triangle out. A nice little triangle. And these are going to be our darts where we're going to sew. Okay. We're going to do the same thing on this side. So again, now if you are an experienced quilter or sewist, you do not need to necessarily make the marks. You can line them up on your ruler, or sorry, on your mat, and you could line up from that 1 inch down to this 2 inch and do that. If, however, you are new to sewing and or quilting, let's go ahead and make those marks. We're just going to do that 1 inch and that 2 inch, and then come with our rotary cutter and make that cut. Okay, next step, we are going to do the same thing for, sorry, fold this up the right way. We're going to go this way. So we folded down this center. Now we're going to fold it up, match it that way, and do this center. So again, we'll just do the 1 and the 2 inch and make those cuts. Okay, so now we have this pretty little piece so that when we are sewing these, we're going to come in, we're going to sew 1/4 inch seam here. We will sew 1/4 inch. We're just keeping them right where we folded those, and then we're just going to sew on those. So just like it was folded in half and we made that cut, now we're just going to sew on that, okay? And then we'll come here, we'll fold this, and we're going to sew that. But we need to do the same thing to our main fabric. So we're going to fold it in half and make those marks and make those cuts. Again, if you are an experienced quilter, and honestly, I mean, I have been quilting for many, many years. I'm still going to make the marks myself. So don't feel pressure to get to the point where you aren't marking things like this. I mark because I have too much stuff going on in my head and through my mind to not make these marks and make sure I'm getting them correct. So, all right, so the 1 inch and the 2 inch, and we'll go ahead, make that cut. All right, you may have noticed that I changed marking utensils. I could not see the white marks on this fabric, so I grabbed a Frixen Pen, and I will put an affiliate link in the description for this as well. Now these they disappear with heat, but sometimes they come back, I've heard. Now I haven't experienced that myself. However, if you are using batik, I have experienced where when you mark with this and then iron over it, which is how you get rid of the color with the heat, it takes away the ink in the fabric in the batiks, and I have actually experienced that. So just be aware that if you are marking with one of these, that you are using it on the wrong side of the fabric that you are using if it's a batik, or in this case, I know we're going to be using it, the little marks, if there's anything left, they're going to be in the seam allowance, so we aren't going to deal with that at all. Okay, I'm going to take you to the sewing machine for the rest of this. So our next step is going to be sewing our darts, and I like to come in and start from the raw edge and go towards the fold. That way we can make sure we are coming all the way down to the fold and closing that off. Again, making sure that you are using your 100% thread, 100% cotton thread. And we're just going to come down and lock that up. We're going to do that for all 4 of the darts with the liner and all 4 of the darts on our main fabric. And now we have that fun bowl shape. So we'll continue with the main. Sew your right sides together and sew those darts. I'm doing just a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on these. And then back stitching to lock that up at the bottom where the fold is. I don't back stitch at the top because that's going to be in our seam allowance. All right, next we are going to make sure we trim off all of our threads. This is going to keep it nice and clean, and then we don't have to worry about anything popping through either as we are putting these pieces together. Okay, do the same for the liner. And then we're going to put these bowl pieces together and we will sew all the way around, and then we'll flip and we will press, and then we will top stitch, and this little personalized bowl koozie will be ready to gift or keep for yourself if you're making it for yourself. All right, so we have our liner and our main fabric, and we are going to put them, right sides together. So our main is inside, okay? And I like to take these and I'm going to match up the dart seams here. I'm not going to worry about anything else. I just want to match up the dart seams, and I will sew these open just because of the thickness with the batting. So I'll open up these seams. I'm not pressing them. I'm not worried about that. But I want the seams open when I come over with my machine, with my needle, to sew these. I think they just sew better and come together better when they are open. If you are worried about these coming apart, because they're open, you can shorten your stitch length. I haven't had an issue with that happening, but with my Baby Lock Brilliant, I have my stitch length set at 2 for all piecing. I just feel like that's a better stitch length. So it's a little shorter stitch length than what it comes set at automatically. So it is a shorter stitch length. All right, and one more, and then we're just going to sew all the way around, leaving an opening so that we can flip this out. And again, I'll be using as I do projects where we are sewing and flipping, I always put pins in to remind myself to stop so that I don't sew all the way and have to pick. It happens enough that I just remind myself right at the beginning. Okay, so I am going to go ahead, get started. I do like to sew with the main fabric on the inside. You could sew it where it's flipped around, but I like to sew with the main fabric on the top, on the inside, like this, because when you flip it, then you'll see the outside just lays better when it is sewn with it on the inside of the bowl, if that makes sense. So I'm going to do a wider seam allowance. I'm going to use the outside of my presser foot. This is my end presser foot. I'm going to use the outside of the presser foot instead of the 1/4 inch mark. That's just going to give me a little bit more to work with when I flip and do the top stitching, because there are so many layers. So I like a little wider seam allowance when I'm doing this. So it doesn't matter because the bowl koozie height isn't important. And so we can do that, take in a little more seam allowance to give ourselves a little bit more to work with when we are doing our seam allowance. So I'm going to lock this stitch and take this out. And we are just going to sew all the way around. And we do have a little bit of a corner here because of the dart. So I'm going to sew right to the middle of the seam, and then I'll rotate my fabric just a little bit. Just pivot it a little bit. And then we're going to come and stop at that 1/4 inch. And again, I'm taking a little bit more, so I'll stop a little bit before that 1/4 inch, but take that 1/4 inch mark it with a pin so that you know where to stop. And come up here. And I took one. I'm actually going to go back one step because I don't want to go in that far. All right. And then we'll just continue all the way around. All right, now we're going to come to my pin to remind me to knot this off. Back, do a little back stitching here, and trim our threads. All right, and now we want to trim our corners. So you're just going to trim, being careful not to cut the seam that we've just sewn. Okay, we get all of that. Okay, now I'll take you to the table. We will flip this out and we will press. All right, so we are almost done with our microwave bowl koozie, and we are going to now flip it and push out those corners. So you should have clipped them as I did at the sewing machine. And we are going to find the opening and go ahead. Mine is kind of small, so you can leave a bigger one if you want. And go ahead, find that far corner and pull it through. And just manipulate that fabric. That's all, it's just fabric. It's just fabric, so we can go ahead and pull on it and push it through that little hole. Make it go where we want it to go right now. All right, and then once we have all of that pulled through, go ahead, get the corners out just with your finger to start with, just to get yourself a good start. And then you can come through with a tool. You can do like a chopstick or anything. I do like, and this is going to be an affiliate link down in the description, I do like the purple Thang to do all of this work. So it's just a little plastic tool, literally called the purple Thang, and it just fits really nicely in, and you can use either end just do it, just be careful. The fabric, you can rip a hole through it. I may have done that once or twice. So you want to make sure that you are doing this carefully but getting those corners, those points pulled out. Okay, so we are just going to go around to each corner and kind of, once again, just manipulate that fabric out to get that nice point. And getting those points out right now before you press is really important, because we're going to give it a really good press so that we can get a really nice, see, you can see, get a hole in there if you aren't careful. We want a really nice point so that we can get a really nice press, so we can get a really nice top stitch and have a really nice finish. So this all starts right now with these corners. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and give this a press. And I like to do this with the main fabric already flipped to the outside, so that we have, if you flip it this way and try to press, you can see that it gets really full. And so we want to have it out to this way. This is our main fabric, so we want that to be out. For some reason, it just lays a little better when it's out like that. And then we're going to come around and we will press. And I'm going to leave that opening for the end so that we can press without having to worry about what we're doing with that opening. We can let that sit for just a second. So we're going to take our hot iron, kind of roll and manipulate this fabric again so that you can feel that the seams are together, and you can see that seam, that edge is right in the middle. And we're going to press again with the main fabric on top, because that's also going to help it kind of sit on top of the lining fabric, and then that way when we come and do our top stitching, that lining fabric stays underneath. We'll go to the next corner. And just press it. Don't move your iron, just press it straight down. And then be careful, that is really hot. Manipulate that fabric so it's all nice and straight together. Okay, and now we're coming to where the opening is. So I'm going to first do the side that is not open. Hit that with that hot iron quick. All right, and now I'm going to do the bottom first. So I want to first press this part. It's already nicely folded because it's a smaller piece, so that seam allowance is already folded under. It's going to stay there. But I want to give it a nice crisp edge. And then we'll flip it and do the top and give that a nice crisp edge. And then I'm going to take it and throw some clips on there just to hold it in place till I get to the machine. And then we'll go ahead and get that sewn. I will show you where I like to start and how I like to get all the way around. We are so close to having that bowl cozy ready. All right, we are going to top stitch our bowl cozy. Now I'm going to start at the seam allowance, and so I can kind of hide my back stitching. I'm also going to start on the side where my opening is. I'm going to use the 1/4 inch mark on my machine here, because this will, instead of my main 1/4 inch mark, just to bring it in a little bit, but I'll still be catching the fabric in that's flipped. I'm going to bring my stitch length up to a 4 so that we have a nice long stitch, top stitch. Actually, I think I'm going to go down. I'm going to go down to 3.5. Okay, and then we are going to finish our bowl cozy. So Again, I'm kind of going in between that 1/4 inch mark here, the 2 1/4 inch marks. I don't want to get too close to the edge, but I also want to make sure I'm catching that fabric that we flipped. And that's in our seam allowance, so forgot to back stitch, so let's do that quick. All right, and we'll go ahead and sew. The nice thing about the top stitching and using a longer length is that the sewing goes a little faster, and you can get done with this last step. But you do want to, this is your final step, so don't go too fast. You want to finish this nicely. All right, and pivot. Now we're coming up to that dart, so again, I just go up to that seam, and that's where I make my pivot. You can definitely, you know, there's a lot of layers here, so switching to a walking foot, not a bad idea. It goes pretty smoothly until you get to those thicker seams at the darts. The rest of it, a regular presser foot works just fine. If you are new to quilting and sewing though, and you have a walking foot, might be easier to switch to that, because then you're not fighting the fabric and you're not worried about what the presser foot is doing and where your needle is, and what the, you know, if it's feeding it correctly or not. As you can see, I have to kind of work it around that lump there. So if instead of worrying about it, if you're new or inexperienced with the craft, go ahead, get your walking foot out and use it for this. All right, and we're just gonna come up to the end. I'm gonna go ahead and go over where I already sewn, do a couple back stitches. And we are done with our bowl koozie after we trim those threads. Let's go take a look. Okay, we are done with our personalized bowl koozie. I am excited to give this to my uncle for Christmas. He doesn't need a lot, so just a fun little gift I think he will use. But a quick little gift that you can make for anybody. These make great, actually, if you have a graduate coming up this spring, great graduation gifts for those college students. You know, they microwave and warm up a lot of things in the microwave, so these are great. Personalize them so they always know it's theirs. All right, I will see you in 2 weeks for the next Snippets with Patterns by Jen. Go make something you love.